My husband said to his mother. This fat hippopotamus disgusts me. I just want her money. I heard it from the hallway at 9:14 p.m., standing beside the shoe rack where the smoke alarm chirped twice. The living room went quiet. The television stayed on. His mother folded a napkin and placed it under her teacup. No one looked toward the hall. What should have followed didn't. No apology. No correction. He laughed once, short. I didn't move. I checked my phone and took a screenshot of the bank app that was already open. The alert showed the mortgage payoff cleared 3 weeks earlier. The house was free. I locked the screen. At 7:52 a.m. the next morning, the notary's card sat on the kitchen counter, face down. I signed where the tab pointed. The buyer wired 11 million Egyptian pounds by noon. By 2:11 p.m., the withdrawal receipt printed warm. At 6:40 p.m., I slid a small piece of paper under the fruit bowl. It had one sentence. Then I closed the door. No address. No date. Signed. I left before the call to prayer. The hallway light was still on. His shoes were lined up by the door, toes pointing out. I stepped around them. The elevator stalled once between floors. I watched the floor numbers blink and pressed nothing. At 8:03 a.m., my phone vibrated. One missed call. I didn't open it. I put the phone in my bag and zipped it shut. The bag was heavier than usual because of the envelope. The receipt was folded twice. I could feel the crease through the paper. By 9:30 a.m., I was sitting in the back of a rideshare with the window cracked. The driver had a radio on low. The same song played twice. I didn't comment. I checked the bank app again. The balance was there. I took another screenshot and saved it to a folder named May. At 11:18 a.m., a message arrived from his sister. Mom's upset. What happened last night? The message showed delivered. I didn't type. I archived it. The next message came at 11:21 a.m. Please call. I turned off previews. The hotel lobby smelled like cleaner and coffee. The desk clerk asked for an ID. I handed it over. He slid a key card across the counter and said the room was ready early. I nodded. The elevator music skipped. On the 3rd floor, a cart blocked half the hall. A cleaner pushed it aside, without looking at me. Inside the room, the bedspread had a small tear near the corner. I set my bag on the chair. The chair wobbled. I placed the envelope on the desk and flattened it with my palm. I took a photo of it and sent it to my email. Then I tore the envelope and dropped the pieces into the trash. At 1:02 p.m., my husband called again. The phone buzzed against the wood. I let it ring. At 1:05 p.m., his mother called. I turned the phone face down. The buzzing stopped. I opened my laptop and checked the shared calendar we used for bills. The house taxes were marked paid. The utilities were set to auto-pay through the end of the month. I took screenshots and saved them to the same folder. I logged out. At 2:47 p.m., I walked to a copy shop down the street. The clerk stapled the pages crooked. I asked him to redo it. He did. I paid in cash. The receipt was thin. I folded it and slid it behind my license. On the way back, I passed a pharmacy. The scale near the door was free. I stepped on it. The number flashed and went blank. I stepped off. A woman behind me cleared her throat. I moved aside. Back in the room, I spread the papers on the bed and checked each page. Names spelled correctly. Dates matched. Signatures clear. I stacked them and put them into a plain folder. The folder fit into the bag, without bending. At 4:10 p.m., a voicemail came in. I didn't play it. The notification preview showed his name and the timestamp. I took a screenshot and saved it. I showered. The water took a minute to heat. I used the small bar of soap and left it on the sink instead of the tray. I changed clothes and put the worn ones in the bag. The zipper stuck for a second. I eased it closed. At 6:32 p.m., I ordered food and ate half. I wrapped the rest and put it in the mini fridge. I set an alarm for 5:30 a.m. and then turned it off. I sat on the edge of the bed and wrote one line on a scrap of paper from the notepad. I folded it once and placed it under the fruit bowl back at the house in my mind exactly where it would be seen and not read right away. At 9 p.m., I powered down my phone. I put it in the bag and locked the bag. The key was small. I set it on the desk, then picked it up and put it in my pocket. Outside, a door closed somewhere down the hall. By Tuesday morning, the messages stacked without gaps. The phone stayed off. I used the hotel desk phone to call a car service and wrote the confirmation number on the back of a receipt. The ink bled through. I pressed it flat with the mug. At 8:19 a.m., I checked out. The clerk asked if everything was fine. I slid the key card back and said yes. Outside, the curb had a crack filled with gum. I stepped over it. The driver loaded my bag and asked the destination. I gave an address I'd used once before for paperwork. He repeated it to confirm. I nodded. During the drive, I opened my email on the laptop. 3 notifications from the real estate office confirmed the transfer. 1 from the bank confirmed the withdrawal. I saved each as a PDF and renamed them with dates. I backed them up to a cloud folder and then to a USB. The USB went into the small pocket with the zipper that never stuck. At 9:47 a.m., a new email arrived from my husband's work account. Subject line, please. I opened it. 2 sentences. He said there had been a misunderstanding. He asked where I was. I closed the email without replying and archived it. The office building had a guard desk and a metal tray. I placed my bag in the tray and stepped through. The guard waved me on without checking the screen. Upstairs, the receptionist asked me to wait. A clock on the wall ran fast by 2 minutes. I noted it. The attorney called me in at 10:22 a.m. He asked for documents. I set the folder on the desk and opened it in order. He scanned the first page and nodded. He asked if there were joint accounts. I said no. He asked if there had been gifts. I said yes and slid the receipt across. He circled a date with a pen and wrote a note. At 11:03 a.m., my phone turned on long enough to pull messages to the laptop. I didn't unlock it fully. The previews loaded. His mother's number appeared 6 times. His sister's appeared twice. One message from a neighbor read, "Your lights are on." I saved the screen and powered the phone off again. At noon, I ate at a place near the office. The table rocked. I folded a napkin under one leg. The waiter refilled my water without asking. I paid and left the receipt on the tray until he came back. He thanked me. On the sidewalk, I passed a bank branch. I went inside and asked for a cashier's check to be canceled and reissued. The clerk asked for ID. She typed for a long time and then asked me to confirm the amount. I did. She printed the new check and asked me to sign the old one. I signed and watched her stamp it void. At 2:36 p.m., the driver dropped me at a furnished apartment. The landlord met me in the hall and handed me keys. One had a red tag. One had none. I tried both. The red tag fit the door. Inside, the couch cushions didn't match. I put my bag down and tested the locks. They worked. I plugged in the laptop and connected to the Wi-Fi. I changed passwords. I wrote the new ones on paper and then tore the paper into strips and flushed them. I took the USB and placed it inside a book on the shelf. At 4:08 p.m., a message arrived from his sister again. "Mom says you misunderstood. Please come back." The message showed read a minute later without my opening it. I took a screenshot. At 6:55 p.m., I went to the grocery store. I bought bread, eggs, and tea. The cashier asked if I wanted a bag. I said yes. The receipt printed long. I folded it and put it in my wallet. At 9:12 p.m., I listened to the voicemail from earlier on the laptop. He said my name once and then stopped. The line clicked. I saved the file and labeled it with the time. I closed the laptop and turned off the light, leaving the kitchen one on. On Thursday, a courier rang the apartment bell at 10:41 a.m. I watched through the peephole before opening. He asked my name and held out a thin envelope. I signed on the screen with my finger. The signature looked rushed. I closed the door and set the envelope on the counter without opening it. At 10:58 a.m., I opened my laptop and logged into the utility accounts tied to the house. The dashboard showed usage spikes overnight. I downloaded the logs and saved them as CSV files. The timestamps matched the night I left. I added them to the folder. At 11:20 a.m., I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from his mother on lined paper. The pen had pressed hard on certain words. She wrote that families forgive. She wrote that weight is a sensitive topic. She wrote that money complicates things. She asked me to come home and talk. No apology appeared. I scanned the note and placed the original back into the envelope. At 12:07 p.m., my husband sent a message from a new number. "We can fix this. Don't make it public." I saved the message. At 12:10 p.m., another followed. "Mom didn't mean it." I saved that too. I didn't reply. At 12:44 p.m., the building manager knocked to test the smoke alarm. I stepped aside and watched him stand on a chair. The chair legs squeaked. He replaced the battery and wrote the date on a sticker. I noted it. At 1:33 p.m., a call came from an unfamiliar number. I answered. A man introduced himself as a mediator recommended by his employer. He said my husband had requested a meeting. He asked if I would attend. I asked for the request in writing. He said he would email. He asked for my address. I declined and gave a P.O. box. He agreed. At 2:02 p.m., the email arrived. It included a proposed agenda and a list of documents requested. I forwarded it to my attorney and saved a copy. The agenda included financial reconciliation. I highlighted it. At 2:40 p.m., I opened a shared photo album we hadn't used in months. A new photo appeared. It showed my husband standing in the kitchen with his mother, holding the fruit bowl. The piece of paper was gone. The caption read, "Talk soon." The timestamp showed that morning. I saved the image. At 3:15 p.m., my sister-in-law called. I answered and put the phone on the table. She said she was calling to help. She said everyone was worried. She said my husband had been under stress. She said his words were jokes. I asked her to repeat that last part. She did. I wrote the time down. At 3:19 p.m., she added that his mother had suggested changing the locks for safety. She said it was temporary. She said they would hold my things. I thanked her for calling and ended the call. I took a screenshot of the call log. At 3:27 p.m., I opened the bank app and checked alerts. A failed attempt to access my account appeared from a device I didn't recognize. The timestamp matched the call. I saved it. At 4:05 p.m., I went downstairs to the mailroom. The box had a flyer wedged in the hinge. I pulled it free and kept it with the envelope back upstairs. I placed both into the folder. At 5:12 p.m., I emailed the mediator and agreed to a meeting the following Monday at 10 a.m. I asked for the location and the attendee list. He replied at 5:21 p.m. My husband and his mother would attend. I forwarded the email. At 6:08 p.m., I cooked eggs and toast. The pan handle was loose. I tightened the screw with a coin. I ate standing up and left the plate in the sink. At 8:54 p.m., a message arrived from my husband. "We changed the locks. Don't worry, we'll give you access after Monday." I saved it and closed the app. Monday arrived, without noise. I left early and walked the last block. The building had a glass door that didn't close all the way. Someone had wedged a folded flyer into the frame. I pushed it out and went in. The conference room smelled like marker ink, a rectangular table for chairs. One chair had a loose screw and tilted when I tested it. I chose a different one and set my bag under the table with the zipper facing me. The mediator came in first and placed a legal pad at the center. He checked his watch and wrote the date at the top. My husband arrived next. He didn't sit. He stood behind the chair and kept his hands on the backrest. His mother followed and took the seat closest to the door. She set her purse on the table and kept it there. No one asked me how I was. The mediator explained the agenda and asked if everyone agreed. My husband said yes. His mother nodded. I didn't speak. The mediator asked my husband to summarize what he wanted to resolve. He said there had been a misunderstanding. He said words were taken out of context. He said the situation escalated because I left suddenly. He said the house situation was temporary. He said they were protecting assets. When he finished, the mediator looked at me. I opened my bag and placed a folder on the table. I slid it forward without opening it. The mediator asked what it was. I said documentation. He asked if he could review it later. I said yes. The mediator asked about the locks. My husband said they were changed for safety. He said he notified me. His mother added that it was common sense. She said anyone would do the same. The mediator asked about finances. My husband said there were no joint accounts. He said he never tried to access my bank. He said the alerts were probably system errors. He said he had nothing to hide. The mediator wrote while he spoke. When the mediator asked for supporting documents, my husband said he could provide them after the meeting. He said he didn't bring anything because this was informal. His mother reached into her purse and placed a folded paper on the table. It was a list of household expenses written in her handwriting. She said it showed how much strain there had been. The mediator glanced at it and set it aside. I took my phone out and placed it face down. I didn't unlock it. The mediator asked if there was anything else before scheduling next steps. My husband said no. His mother said she wanted to resolve things privately. She said family matters shouldn't involve outsiders. The mediator nodded and suggested a follow-up. As he spoke, my husband leaned forward and said one more thing. He said he never asked for my money. He said he had always supported me. He said he had never insulted me. He looked at his mother while he said it, then back at the mediator. The mediator wrote again. I stood up and adjusted the chair I hadn't used so it didn't wobble into the table. I picked up my bag and waited. The mediator asked if I wanted to add anything. I said I would send additional materials through my attorney. He nodded. In the hallway, my husband followed me. He said we should talk alone. I stopped near the water cooler. The jug was almost empty. I said nothing. He said my silence was making this worse. I stepped aside and let another group pass. Outside, I took the folded flyer from my pocket and dropped it in a bin. I checked my phone once, long enough to take a screenshot of the meeting notes email the mediator had just sent. It listed my husband's statements as bullet points. I saved it. The mediator's email arrived at 12:36 p.m. The subject line read, Summary. I opened it on the laptop, not the phone. The bullet points were neutral. Dates, claims, requests, under financial statements. It listed my husband's words exactly. No joint accounts, no access attempts, no insults made. I saved the PDF and renamed it with the date. Then I forwarded it to my attorney. At 1:10 p.m., my attorney replied with one sentence asking for the access logs. I already had them. I attached the files and sent them back. The progress bar finished and disappeared. I closed the laptop. At 2:04 p.m., a courier delivered another envelope. This one was thicker. Inside was a letter from my husband's employer's HR department confirming receipt of the mediation notes and requesting any additional materials by Friday at noon. I scanned the letter, saved it, and put the original into the folder. The folder was getting stiff. At 3:18 p.m., my husband texted from the same new number. I told him the truth today. I didn't reply. At 3:21 p.m., he added, I never insulted you. You know that. I took screenshots and saved them to the same folder as the mediator notes. At 3:47 p.m., his mother sent a voice note. I played it on the laptop with the volume low. She said, families say things in private. She said I should understand context. She said money changes people. She said we should end this before it gets ugly. I saved the audio and labeled it with the time. At 4:30 p.m., I logged into the telecom account for the house. The call history showed a new device added 2 days earlier. I downloaded the report. The location matched the house. I saved it. At 5:05 p.m., I went for a walk. The sidewalk near the apartment had been patched in squares. I stepped from one to the next. At the corner, A cafe had a handwritten sign taped to the door. Cash only. I bought tea and paid with a small bill. The change clinked into my palm. I counted it and put it away. Back inside, I set the kettle on and opened the laptop again. I reviewed the access attempt alert. The device ID repeated across entries. The times clustered around phone calls. I highlighted the rows and added a note. I exported a clean copy and saved it separately. At 6:52 p.m., my husband emailed from his work account again. Subject line, clarification. He wrote that he never requested my funds. He wrote that any comments about my appearance were jokes taken out of context. He wrote that he had always respected me. He wrote that he wanted this resolved quietly. I saved the email and printed it to PDF. At 7:14 p.m., I received a calendar invite for a follow-up meeting the next week. The attendee list included HR, the mediator, my husband, and his mother. I accepted and forwarded it to my attorney. At 8:09 p.m., I opened the shared cloud storage we had once used for photos. A new folder appeared labeled House. Inside were scanned utility bills and a document titled Expense Summary. The metadata showed it had been created that afternoon. I saved copies. At 8:42 p.m., I cooked rice. The lid rattled. I turned the heat down and waited. When it finished, I left the pot on the stove and ate from a bowl at the counter. At 9:30 p.m., I organized the folder. I put the mediator summary first, then the texts, then the emails, then the logs. I added a contents page and numbered it. I zipped the folder and set it on the desk with the zipper facing me. At 10:11 p.m., another text arrived. Please stop. You're making me look bad. I saved it. I didn't answer. The follow-up meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. I arrived early and sat in the lobby where the chairs were bolted to the floor. One armrest was loose. I chose the chair beside it and placed my bag between my feet. At 9:42 a.m., my husband emailed HR and copied me. He wrote that the situation was being exaggerated. He wrote that he had never tried to access my accounts. He wrote that there had been no financial pressure and no inappropriate language. He asked that the matter be closed after the meeting. I saved the email without replying. Inside the conference room, the table was longer than the last one. Water bottles were lined up in front of each seat. One label was peeling. I took the bottle with the peeling label and twisted the cap until it cracked. HR opened the meeting by summarizing the issue. They said the goal was clarification and closure. The mediator asked my husband to restate his position for the record. He said he had never logged into my bank account. He said he didn't know the passwords. He said any alerts were coincidence. He said he never spoke about me disrespectfully. He said the messages were being misread. He said his mother had nothing to do with finances. HR asked if he was certain. He said yes. He said it twice. He leaned back and crossed his arms. His mother spoke next. She said she handled household matters, but never money. She said she suggested changing the locks only after I left. She said she was trying to protect everyone. She said this had gone too far. HR asked if there were documents. My husband said there were none because nothing happened. He said systems make mistakes. He said the issue was emotional, not factual. I took my phone out and placed it on the table face down again. HR asked me if I wanted to respond. I said I would submit materials after the meeting. They nodded. The mediator asked about the device access alerts mentioned previously. My husband said he had never seen them. He said he didn't recognize the device ID. He said it could belong to anyone. He said it didn't prove anything. HR asked if he was willing to put that statement in writing. He said yes. He said he would sign whatever was needed. HR wrote a note and said they would send a confirmation. The meeting ended early. In the hallway, my husband caught up to me. He said HR was overreacting. He said I should help him calm it down. He said this was between us. I didn't stop walking. Outside, I sat on a low wall and opened my laptop. The HR follow-up email arrived at 10:58 a.m. Attached was a written statement summarizing my husband's claims and asking him to confirm accuracy. I saved it. At 11:12 a.m., his confirmation came through. He replied confirmed. I saved that too. I closed the laptop and watched a delivery truck back into a space. The beeper sounded twice, then stopped. I stood up and walked away. The contradiction didn't arrive as an argument. It arrived as a spreadsheet. At 8:26 a.m. the next morning, HR forwarded an attachment labeled IT Review. I opened it on the laptop. The first page listed device IDs, login attempts, and access paths. One line was highlighted in gray. The device ID matched the one from my bank alert logs. The IP location matched the house. The timestamps overlapped with the calls from his sister and the message about changing the locks. I didn't annotate it. I saved it. At 9:03 a.m., another email followed from HR. They said they had requested access records from the telecom provider tied to the home internet. The records showed a login session during the same window. The username field was blank. The device fingerprint was not. I forwarded both emails to my attorney and closed the laptop. At 10:14 a.m., my husband emailed HR again. He wrote that the device must have been compromised. He wrote that anyone could have used the Wi-Fi. He wrote that this proved nothing. He copied his mother. I saved the email. At 11:02 a.m., HR replied to everyone. They attached his signed confirmation from the meeting and placed it above the IT Review in the thread. They asked him to explain the discrepancy. They asked for a response by end of day. He didn't reply. At 1:27 p.m., his mother sent a message. This is spiraling. Please end it. I saved it. At 2:41 p.m., HR sent a calendar update. The follow-up meeting was canceled. A new subject line appeared. Next steps. I opened it. They wrote that the matter would proceed through internal review. They wrote that no further mediation was required. They wrote that communication should go through counsel. I shut the laptop. In the afternoon, I went to the grocery store. The freezer aisle was loud. I picked up tea, rice, and soap. At checkout, the card reader lagged and then approved. I put the receipt in my wallet without folding it. Back at the apartment, I fixed the loose screw on the chair by the desk. I turned it until it stopped moving. I wiped the surface with a cloth and put the folder into a drawer. I left the drawer unlocked. At 6:18 p.m., a final email arrived from my husband's work account. It had no subject. The body said he didn't remember saying those words. It said this had gotten out of control. It said he needed time. I saved it. That night, I washed dishes and set them upside down on the towel. The kettle clicked off. I poured water and let the tea steep longer than usual. The next morning, I walked past a bank branch and didn't go in. I kept walking. At the corner, a woman was waiting for the light to change. She adjusted the strap on her bag. The light turned green. I went on with my day. The first contact came on a Monday, late. Not a call. A forwarded email. At 8:22 p.m., my attorney sent a message with one attachment and no commentary. The attachment was a formal notice from HR. It stated that the internal review had concluded. It listed policy violations in numbered paragraphs. It noted inconsistencies between written confirmations and verified access logs. It stated that corrective action had been taken. No details, no names, just outcomes. I saved it and closed the file. At 8:41 p.m., a message arrived from an unfamiliar number. They told me to speak through lawyers. I didn't reply. A second message followed at 8:43 p.m. I never thought it would go this far. I took a screenshot and archived the thread. The next morning, I received a bank notification confirming a permanent change to account access settings. I hadn't requested it. The note said it was applied after an internal security review. I saved the confirmation email and deleted nothing. At noon, I met a friend for coffee. We talked about work. She complained about a chair in her office that leaned too far back. I told her to tighten the screw underneath. She wrote it down. On the way home, I stopped at a stationery shop and bought a small notebook. Plain cover. No lines. I wrote the date on the first page, and nothing else. I put it in the drawer next to the folder. That evening, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. No one stood there. On the floor was an envelope without a return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. My husband's handwriting. He wrote that he was sorry for how things sounded. He wrote that people say things they don't mean. He wrote that he hoped I was safe. I folded the paper once and placed it back into the envelope. I didn't scan it. I didn't save it. I put it in the recycling bin with the flyers. The next day, I changed the curtains. The rod slipped and I tightened it. I opened a window and then closed it again. In the afternoon, I received a calendar reminder for a meeting that no longer existed. I deleted it. That night, I set an alarm for the morning and left it on. I placed the phone face up on the table and went to bed. When it rang, I got up. I got up when the alarm rang and didn't hit snooze. The floor was cold. I put on socks before standing. The kettle took longer than usual to click off. I waited. At 7:36 a.m., an email arrived from the real estate office. Subject line, final confirmation. It confirmed the transfer had been recorded with the registry. The document number was included. I saved it to the same folder and then closed the inbox. By mid-morning, the apartment buzzer sounded twice. It wasn't my doorbell. Someone else answered it downstairs. I stayed at the desk and finished what I was doing. At 11:09 a.m., my attorney sent another short update. He wrote that there would be no further requests. He wrote that the record now spoke for itself. He asked if I wanted the originals returned or stored. I replied with one word: store. In the afternoon, I went to a government office to update an address. The clerk asked me to sign on a pad that didn't register the pen well. I signed again. She stapled a form and handed it back. I put it in my bag and didn't look at it. Outside, a delivery truck blocked half the street. Cars waited. No one honked. When the truck moved, traffic resumed as if nothing had happened. At 4:27 p.m., a missed call appeared from my husband's old number. It didn't ring. It just showed up. I took a screenshot and deleted the log. That evening, I sorted papers I no longer needed. Old manuals, receipts from years ago, a warranty card. I tore them slowly and dropped them into the bin. I kept the bin open until it was full, then tied it and took it out. Before dinner, I noticed the chair by the desk had shifted again. I checked the screw. It was still tight. I moved the chair closer to the table and left it there. After eating, I washed the dishes and dried them with a towel that had a loose thread. I cut the thread and threw it away. I put the towel back on the hook. At 9:18 p.m., a final message came through from the unfamiliar number. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I didn't answer. I archived it and turned off notifications for that thread. Before bed, I opened the notebook and wrote one line. Not a sentence, just a list of 3 items to buy the next day. I closed it and put it back in the drawer. I turned off the light and left the kitchen one on.